5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome to episode 3 of our podcast series, State of Supermoto, here at SMR. In this series, we dive into Supermoto past, present, and future. I'm your host, Sean Butterman, also known as Butters. With me, as usual, are my best friends. These are the guys that make this stuff happen. First up, we got Johnny. He's a drummer. He's a skateboarder. He's a professional crasher. He's an amateur supermoto rider. What's up, Johnny Bang?
What's up, brother? I've been crashing for a while. Pretty good at falling down on a skateboard.
Yeah, I think that's probably the key to it, is being a skater. And secondly, we got my ultra talented riding buddy, pro photoshopper, wannabe aspiring lights champion, the Simpster Ryan Samp.
What's
Samp.
happening, folks?
First loser.
Yes, sir.
And then today we got an absolute legend, not only in supermoto, but also moto, free riding, bicycling. I'm super pleased to have Micky Dymond on the podcast. What's up, Micky?
Hi, guys. Hi. Yeah,
What's up, Micky?
I'm super glad that you guys are doing something like this.
Yeah.
I've known Sean for a handful of years. At the start of Sean's racing career in supermoto, and a few, I'm sure that I've probably crossed paths with some of your listeners, but have always enjoyed a lot the supermoto family of people that you met with in America and in Europe. I was lucky to do a lot of racing with a lot of guys in motocross that came over to do some supermoto as well. So it is it's amazing how special it is to be able to spend an entire day on a motorcycle and have a good day, whether it's riding, racing, or play riding, or finding jumps.
Yeah.
It is it's in everybody that has done it, in their souls, because it's almost like a spiritual relationship with your thoughts and your motorcycle. And supermoto had some real special things because it created a new appreciation for what you could do on a motorcycle, and the reach that it had out of motocross and onto like motorcycle racing on road racing and dirt track. And there's just so many amazing things to experience on a, like if you had a good day and on a good 450 with, like, say, a brand new set of Dunlop qualifying tires on a day that it was 80 degrees and the pavement was good, and
Dirt section is prepped, and
yeah. If you've done it, you understand. If you have, maybe it's a good reason to try it, because it is it was, and I'm sad that it has almost had like a timeout, sort of, because mostly because of probably economy reasons. It wasn't cheap either,
No.
but
yeah.
Anyway,
You mentioned the come over. What was that vibe like? What were the rumors? I know Red Bull picked up the contract, and what was that like for you? And I guess you could explain that to me, because I wasn't around then.
Well, I don't know, in the early 2000s.
Yeah, 2003 was the first year of AMA Supermoto, is like I saw it. But was that when you first rode a Supermoto bike, or was it around that time, or was it before?
No, I almost got to ride in the 80s when they were
Oh,
doing the.
that would be right, because you would have been racing for like Honda and those guys and Yamaha back in the Superbikers, right?
Well, when they stopped doing it, I rode for Husqvarna, and they didn't have really a great bike to do that with, but it
Oh,
was
that's right, because it was early '80s they did it, huh?
yeah.
Okay,
And then I went to Honda in 86.
'85. Oh yeah.
85 been the last time they did it.
Oh
And I know people that like Wardy, he did it.
yeah.
Brock, and there's been a bunch of guys that I would see in the later years, and they were done riding. But Wardy, he's still riding, and
Yeah. You can't
actually,
go.
yeah. There was a period of time I want to say it was like maybe 2000, 2001, where there was a couple of guys and that were more dirt track connected, like and road race guys, like Doug Chandler was one, um, and Kevin Schwantz. I mean, I heard the first I went and rode, we made a bike through All Access, the company I worked for, because we built some of those ramps and built the staging for the podiums stuff. And
That was going to be one of my questions. Was I thought All Access had built the urban cross jumps that were in the AMA series in the 2000s.
yes, we built those, and in the process of us getting the contract with AMA to more or less be able to build a racetrack anywhere, like a parking lot or a city, a warehouse district, on a racetrack where you needed to have a direction change, and there was a wall there. We could build something to make a passable transfer, over a wall, or we had seat bounce type of jumps as well as tabletops, and then as well as like we built staging, so we if there was a flag or and a stage for the celebration afterwards, we would build that stuff too. But in the process of us doing that, the boss at All Access, a guy named Eric Eastland, he was a big motorcycle rider enthusiast himself, and he got me to work there. I ended up working there because I worked for Tony Hawk, and we built a freestyle show, and I did that with All Access. Built a lot of that set that they had for
That's cool.
50% of the Tony Hawk Boom Boom Hawk Jam was built by All Access. There was another company too that built a skate ramp, but all the motorcycle elements and the music elements for his show came from All Access. In a long story short, we started a Supermoto team, as well as building turnkey racing production for AMA.
Okay. Yeah, because that was definitely intertwined. I got to ride the ramps my first year pro in 07 one time. I ended up breaking my leg in St. Louis at that first event of 2007. But that was the only event I ever got to ride those ramps at, and I felt like it was the coolest thing ever.
Well, good. They were good.
I could see on a 450 it being a little small. On a 250, it was perfect.
Yeah, you could definitely over jump them, and flat landing on a Supermoto wheels was there's people that
was like the era of Marchesinis too. It wasn't like Alpinos weren't the rage back then.
Yeah, we started those Marchesini or whatever they were called, and those we would have to after a race you'd have to send them in to a guy to beat them with a hammer and restrain. They were flatted out. But anyway,
my dad beat mine a lot.
Yeah,
I always felt like that the riding the rigid wheels like that because my dad was buddies with this engineer James Parker. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He was kind of famous in the motorcycle industry because he built these like I don't know. It was his company was called Rad, but they built like suspension arm front ends and took like a fork off because when your fork compresses it, the geometry in the front end changes. So you build a suspension arm so the rake would never change on the bike and stuff. And like Yamaha bought his design and built like a GTS 1000 back in the day, but he was kind of mad they butchered it. But he built a bunch of cool bikes and my dad helped him build them. And then he came up, I started racing Supermoto, and he's like, we need a tubeless wheel design. So he came up with a spoke tubeless wheel before Alpina was even doing stuff in Europe. And we were having these rims made in Britain. And I was young, like I was like 13, 14, testing these rims. Because I started riding Supermoto in 2003, but I was just a little young kid that was barely able to fit on a full-size bike. And I was going out and just bending these British rims that were welded in the middle, and we machined all these pieces to make them these tubeless rims. And the design changed, but when I first turned pro, we still didn't have a 16.5, and you needed a 16.5 up front. So I was bending a Marchesini nonstop, and my dad was constantly having to bend it back in the machine shop.
Yeah, there was a lot of things to learn about the 16.5 just to get more grip on and not have such a rigid front, and have the thing skip the corner.
Did you almost feel like I felt like I was almost riding on flats when I rode on that thing in the dirt section? It had such a vague feeling.
There was like a pocket, and if you wanted to run less air pressure, you felt a little bellow, every now and then in the front and the rear. But the other thing, changing the rake, changing the diameter, you had more rubber with the 16.5, so it didn't skip across on heavy braking. As soon as you were on the side of the front wheel, it was starting to skip on, like.
Yeah, it gave you that like almost extra quarter of an inch of contact patch.
Yeah, and those got way better. And then also material too. Dunlop had great material. There was also what was the other company that had more?
Metzler, Michelin.
Michelin good too, but there was another one, and they had more available and cheaper tires.
You're saying Golden Tire?
I think
no,
we did Golden Tire, but that was later.
It was another big one, but they didn't last like Dunlop, Michelin.
Well, it wasn't like the Maxuses that like Burton and those guys were running, was it?
I think it starts with a B.
Maybe. I mean, Bridgestone was definitely making stuff, but I feel like the Dunlops were in the early 2000s were like you couldn't really touch the Dunlop, and then the Metzler was always kind of good.
And then
Bridgestone, I don't
know. So Dunlop, they were sponsoring. They had a truck there, and they weren't cheap. But if you were part of that team, you got good qualifying tires. You got the good stuff if you were in in the points to win a championship. Brock has always kind of taken care of me. We were teammates at Yamaha.
You're talking about Glover.
Yeah, Brock, Glover. Once they got involved, there was moments in Supermoto that it was like there was factory teams, and Yamaha, and there was some Hondas too, but Yamaha was like a legitimate team. And then Mitch Hansen and KTM,
HMC,
the factory with Kurt Nichol was at KTM. They were doing Europe already, and man, there was some good stuff. I did win a championship on the unlimited class riding a 610, and it was a factory motor, and it was fast, man.
That must have been gnarly.
Yeah, it was good.
I was looking up your results from the AMA stuff, because you rode Supermoto pretty much as you could. Like, you've always supported it. You rode it all the years that AMA Pro had a series. You did it. You would come out to a bunch of races, even when it was like the more of the Pro-Am series that you see modern day and stuff, and ride with us and stuff. But like, I was looking back in that first year when it was like a Vegas finale. All the other races counted as qualifiers. And you were 9th overall in the unlimited class in 03. But then you went like on a run where it was like 2004, you were 2nd overall in limited. 2005, you won the championship. 2006, you were 2nd. And then you jumped to the premier class in 07 on a Honda. I think it was an all access bike.
Yeah.
Or part of the team. And then you went back to the unlimited class when you signed with Husqvarna in 08, and you were 4th. You were 4th in the premier class in 07 too. And then
you know what? I was
05 you were...
We went to the last Morongo in 2000. I want to say it was
7, yeah.
2007.
I can't remember if that was 08 or 06, yeah. I want to say it was 7.
Yeah, it was 2007. 2006, I was on a KTM again, but we had a chance to finish 2nd in the series, and in the last weekend, it was a double 2 days, and I got no points, so I went from 2nd to 4th.
Oh no!
I won a race. I won the race that Doug Henry had at his. He put on a race.
Oh, yeah,
in Connecticut,
in Connecticut.
Kerry Hart's brother was killed there, but I won that race, and we had the KTM, or sorry, the all access Honda at that year. We raced with, I guess, Wardy and Fillmore and Herfoss and Burke, and I think I want to say maybe Wardy, maybe Burkhart won the championship that year, but maybe even Herfoss.
I think Herfoss won 08, and then Wardy. I can't remember who it was. Either Burkhart or Wardy.
But all those guys were like, if one of those guys got up front and had a good setup and was riding well, you would just scrap to just stay with them, and when you and then every now and then you'd have a day, and it would just be like, man, it was like, I remember those days that I had that were good. I went to Australia and raced or Belgium
for
a couple times.
Superbikers.
Yeah, I even went to South Africa once with me, Kunzel, and Benny
Carlson,
and they had some good guys there that were that were on good bikes. So it was kind of cool, you know. And I remember like a few times where I had a good race. I won the race, and you wouldn't get. I mean, the races weren't that long anyway, but you wouldn't get tired. So it was like you could just keep going. And I remember being like at the end of the race, and they put the checkered flag out, and I did another lap just because it was just so good. So might as well.
That's awesome.
And there was some really good guys to be around. Australian, there was a guy named Mark Avard, and he could slide like it was. It was just. It was like a pleasure.
I think I've seen videos.
You know, you would be so sideways, and you could pass him up the inside, but why? He was, and he wrote a.
You're just like, I'm just gonna chill. I'm just gonna watch this.
He had he wrote a Husaberg or a Vertimati.
Oh, like bikes, yeah, I remember those.
But they were great at Supermoto. They were. Remember a Puccio Bagnus?
Yeah.
He was great too, but he was scary. He would scare the hell out of you.
There's always some of those guys where you're like, I know I don't want that dude on my inside going in turn one.
Right. Yeah. I raced with Ben Bostrom, and who is he? With Schwantz.
Yeah,
Schwantz,
Kevin.
Like I did a race early in this, like before AMA series started. They'd have a couple one-off races, and McGrath and Wardy had a battle, and Josh Chisholm, and that's really understand where he was, but he was one of the original guys that was just there doing it.
Well, it's like Bakersfield kind of had that crew of like Rick Pierce and Chisholm and stuff.
Yeah, and now his son is probably riding. Yeah.
Yeah, no, Bronson's actually gotten really good now.
Yeah, you know, yeah, it's motorcycles are, you know, they're not. I don't know why, but in my heart and my beliefs as a human being and where we come from, I just don't believe that, you know, the most obvious sport that there is no prejudice from God is motorcycles, because it doesn't matter if you know what type of person you are, or size, or you know who you are, you still can make it and make it amazing in your own way, you know. To other people it could be, oh my gosh, that's like such an ugly style, but he's so fast. It doesn't matter. Everything works.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and that's like you kind of mentioned in the beginning, was like Supermoto is beautiful because like where else can you get this facet of all the motorcyclists, doesn't matter what avenue they came up in and stuff, and put them all on the same track. And yeah, like I think if we look back, like history tells us that the motocrossers are probably the best at it in a lot of ways. There's been some road racers, obviously, like Ben Bostrom. He broke through and he was really talented at that. And there is a handful of road racers that can. But I also am biased. I think moto guys and supercross guys are the most talented of motorcycles.
Yeah, you know, I think that they have the most widespread skill set, because the things that they do are more complete, because they're not stuck just in a turning left. Or and you know what, some of the dirt track guys are amazing, you know. And speed guys too. I mean, I never really rode much speedway, but it's I mean, it would take a long time to learn that.
I'd be scared to do speedway, I think.
Yeah, same with road racing. And man, you can watch stuff now where that trials rider that just he can get on a motocross bike and do stuff that you're like,
Yeah.
And there's some great skills for freestyle guys now, and doing things, because of the foam pit. Now there's all kinds of stuff going on that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it's pretty amazing that people have that type of creativity,
For sure.
And
it always freestyle kind of taps out. It's like you almost think you run into the end of what's possible on it, and then just another year goes by and they just keep coming up with crazier and crazier things.
Yeah, I just saw that guy, the Australian kid, and he does a front flip, a grab release.
Oh my God.
Yeah, like
on a front flip?
Yeah,
dude, no.
How to do that, He did. Or I can't remember his name, but yeah, I'm always surprised and I don't know, amazed. Same with the road race guys, like watching MotoGP now, they're all closely, even watching Supercross today or the
motocross,
they're tenths of a second, and I'm just amazed at it. And then the MotoGP guys even more so. They're the capabilities of those bikes have outshined sometimes the riders. It's like, okay, if you're riding on the Ducatis right now, there's times where Yamaha or Honda maybe has a dominant bike. Same with Formula, some of those, but now most of the bikes are capable of so much more. So they're like slightly different. Guys winning because they're 0.2 of a second better than the other guys. That didn't used to mean anything. 0.2. What? Didn't even have that.
Like the lap times can vary like way more than that very easily. But like nowadays, it's just like boom, 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 and it's just like and from riding asphalt, riding Pikes Peak and then stuff. When you're really in tune with the asphalt section, it's like that. The margin, like the line you're trying to hit, is so skinny, and it's like where you turn in it sets up all the next corners. So it's like to ride that upper echelon, that top 1% on asphalt is so crazy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I liked it. I was lucky. We had before Supermoto, I rode 2-strokes and I rode 125s, and if you couldn't just hope that the team built you a good one, you had to go spend in hours and weeks, months to make that bike work as good as it could, so you could beat the other guys and you could have an advantage. And because it was a 2-stroke, you're working with a carbureted machine that your input made the bike at its best, but to a point where it wouldn't go over a certain like a slim degree, otherwise you would destroy the motor. So you had to be able to carburate that bike every week. I would I remember me and my mechanic would spend a
Is
couple hours.
Is that because of the tech back then that they were just that weak, or was that because your competitors' levels were so high back then that you guys couldn't ride the equipment to its limit because it would break?
Well, to make the bike to where it was able to create the right horsepower, like at full throttle, would have to have a lean enough setting with the carburation so that the bike was able to make, say, 38 horse. If you didn't spend hours on Saturday making that work, you would be making 34 horsepower, and you wouldn't. I mean, you'd still ride okay, but you
we're
wouldn't
so
get the
spoiled
shot.
now with fuel injection.
Yeah, it was it was a necessary inconvenience most of the time. But and they kept notebooks of all the stuff they've already been doing. So you already were with a mechanic that knew how to do that, and they would have a good starting point. But sometimes, you didn't want to have a bike that like it ran great, but it had a bog because it was it would run good. You wanted it to always sound
that clean.
Yeah. And there was like words that you would use, like, "Oh, this bike is now it's happy," because that's the right place. I know they do that now, and they'll have to do the setup with this. You have to do the suspension, pick the right tires. Now there's more choices. We didn't have that many choices. Even in Supermoto, you were lucky and happy if you were on Dunlops, and if you got the right ones, you didn't waste them and go out and do, like, I'm going to do a couple more laps, try to get that time, but it is. And then plus we would cheat a little bit. I remember we had good fuel for qualifying, but it wasn't legal to ride in the race. So you could qualify with it, but you had to get it out for the main.
Yeah, I remember we always had to cheat the sound test back then too. Like I'd stuff boxers around, like, and we'd put different inserts in the pipe or put boxers around, and like you go up to the guy and it's all Kickstarters still, so you're like kicking and kicking and kicking, and things all choked up to be quiet, so it doesn't want to run, and then you like barely pass, you go pull all out.
Yeah.
And then speaking about the carburetors, I remember I'd come in and be like, "Oh, I want to raise or lower the needle, or let's change the pilot." And now I don't even remember why I would do any of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Now they're just, they put in a different, even like going to Pikes Peak, and I rode the big Ducatis, and it was mapping, like, man, this thing doing this, it feels like it. And then you had traction control and things that, like, new things, and they worked. When you learned them, they worked good. And I liked spending time about creating better grip. So I spent a lot of time with Paul Theed at Race Tech, and we went to like offsets for the front wheel. We went out a few times, and we went to 0 just to do it. And it was
on the fork lug offset or on the triples?
Well, some of it was the triple clamps, but you could also they moved. You could move with different settings.
Yeah, the races and stuff.
Yeah, you could change that a little bit, but also the axle placement. You could do it that way too. So the wheel seemed maybe closer to you, the front wheel. The big thing was those triple clamps, and I think on the last year that I rode, I think for some reason I'm going to say 11 was the offset that was like the happy offset. to use.
And was that on the KTMs or on the Hondas?
KTMs.
Okay.
The
Yeah, and then
the Honda started out like a stock one was like at 22. Yeah, and then we changed our forks, and Paul Feed made us clamps. There was a couple other guys that were able to make us clamps, and I think 11 with the KTM. I'm not sure about what the Honda ended up at, but maybe it was 14 or something. But
I want to say it was 12 at the end on like the 09, the first fuel injected ones, because Honda like stink bugged it so much they had to.
Yeah, they were twitchy. Like even that the 610 bike when I was really going, man, that thing was twitchy. But you got used to it, and then
any time you bring that offset close to the steering stem, like the chance for a head shake is higher and stuff. I ask because like I'm a machinist and I make my own clamps and stuff and stuff, so that stuff always fascinates me. And that was one thing I did have a question for you is like, to me in my mind, like you grew up in the 80s and you got to see motocross bikes really evolve in those first few years of the 80s to kind of be what like the two strokes kind of essentially stayed at for so many years. And then Supermoto, you start riding Supermoto, and like that was kind of probably a similar process to what you saw in motocross, no? And stuff. And like what did that process look like when you guys were kind of figuring out what a bike worked? Like you're talking about Paul, you went out with Paul Feed and tried different offsets, but what all were you guys trying?
That was the most interest to get on the right tire, to have the grip on the front end. Mm-hmm. He's really stable and not like, I in the beginning you're running a 17-inch wheel, and a lot of times you'd come in and just push that thing in and low side because you were trying to have grip. The grip should have been there, but it wasn't. And so then we started moving, the suspension lowering stuff, and not only that, but some of the things on the foot pegs, we brought them. I think we rode them up maybe higher, and then sometimes a little bit back, and then shaved them down, and then use like other things so they would drag without rubbing off. I mean, your foot peg, the foot peg would go from 4 inches to 2 inches in like 2 or 3 weeks. You wore it out.
Yeah.
A lot of the motor stuff to make it to where it really ripped and it was really manageable. Like it just felt really good no matter what. To make stuff like that work. And those big bikes, always the bigger engine motors were awesome, but the 450s were so fast already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like the bigger you go, the more like you get that centrifugal force from the piston moving it. Like it tries to stand the bike up as soon as you get on the throttle. So you're fighting just the motor itself. And then like you go to a 250F from a 450 and it just feels so playful. And the 450's got more power, especially a modern 450 has more power than you could ever really do anything with. Stuff, and like they're all like tuned now to where they're super manageable. Stuff like back in the day, it was like, I don't know, they were just like arm rippers. I can't imagine what a factory 610 was like.
Yeah, that thing was really, that was a really fast bike. And then they had the LC4 motor it was a little sluggish, but it had a better top speed. We tried it at Pikes Peak, and it was better, but we couldn't make it work. So we ended up riding that 610 up there, but yeah,
that probably had to be a problem to like carburate for that elevation change.
yeah, up there it was like you wanted more motor. Even with the Ducati, those big bikes, you took away the traction control because it was a turd, you know, and the you know the Aprilia was up there because it just did better in the altitude. The twin.
Yeah. Those things sounded so sweet. I remember always being jealous of the way those things, like when they go by, like Carlson and Atkins, when they were on that team that did the AMA stuff. I'm like, damn.
Yeah. That I got beat by one of those up at Pikes Peak. And the dirt tracker, Davey Durrell, he was riding it. And I passed him down on the pavement, and then up top, he just blew by me. And that thing was, and I was on the Husqvarna had, I think they had one that was a 690 or something. So it was the equivalent of a LC4 motor, but it was a Husky, and I rode up there. And he passed me up on the top and beat me. But
and that was still when it was like true. Like I mean, in my mind, I guess I still consider it a true pike. I've never done it, so I really shouldn't have an opinion on it. But I consider the true Pikes Peak to be when they still had dirt in it and stuff.
That was when there was still dirt up there.
Yeah,
and I won. In 2005, I won and set a record there. And every year,
the 750 class, yeah.
Yeah. And every year they would add asphalt, so it got faster. So my record was there for 1 year, and then Gary Tracy beat it the next year.
I have that in my notes, but you're only a second off him.
Yeah. That was a cool place, and later on it got way too like all pavement, and then and the last time I rode there I was on a 1200cc Ducati, and it was like it was a great bike, and they made it work really good, but it was not a racy bike. It's a Pikes Peak edition multistrada, and it was like like driving a motorhome up there, you know.
Yeah, it's got the 17 on it, but then it's got like these super long forks.
Yeah, it was I rode a BMW, a 1200cc BMW up there once too.
Yeah, I saw that. Like that was like a Supermoto podium. You guys were all on H2s, but it was like Tracy, Yarrow, and yourself, I want to say.
Yep. Me, the two Tracy brothers, me, Gary and Greg, and Casey, and I was, like I had a contract with those guys with BMW to help develop their 450, and I have 2 scars on my knees from one of those tests.
Oh yeah, that one they made. I know which one you're talking about, because Husqvarna, when BMW bought Husqvarna, they tried to continue it, and I rode it was a newer generation of that bike, and that thing tried to kill me all the time.
It had neutral, like all the gears. So like between third and fourth gear, I had a neutral when I was like on a launch over a jump, like a 2 flatland jump, and it stayed in fourth all the way up to the top, and then it found neutral like when I was like just about to take off, and I rode the front end for like a mile before it finally buckled and I went over. But yeah, the BMW, the other one that we raced at Pikes Peak, it wasn't a HP2. It was called it was the same motor, that weird boxer motor, and it was made for sort of like the road, and it was called maybe it was called the Mega Moto or something, but it wasn't the elongated motocross style HP2. I rode one of those too at Erzberg.
Oh, yeah, I remember you doing that.
I did the qualifying days.
Do you like?
Yeah.
First thought is like, why would you want to try to ride something like that there?
Well, they have 3 days of qualifying up the hill, and it's like a 8-mile road up the hill, and there was all kinds of great enduro guys like that were riding that race. They qualified, and some of them rode different bikes, like I mean, if you looked at the names of like the guys that won Erzberg, they were qualifying on a different bike, and then they would ride their other bike, or they just qualify to be in the top 50. You got on the front row. Oh, okay. And one day I think I was maybe third, but I was like maybe fourth overall for one day. And there was like the guys in front of me were the winners of like off-road in Europe,
Yeah,
King,
like David Knight, and
Knight was, and there was a Pfeiffer, and there was a couple guys that rode. There was a guy from BMW, and I'm probably going to butcher his name, but he rode Pikes Peak. He came over and rode Pikes Peak, and he hated it, but he won 2 of those qualifying days for and he's a guy from like Austria or Finland. Man, I can't remember his name right now, but he was their superstar for BMW at that time. And he rode one of those HP2s like a motorbike.
That's nuts.
I'm sorry I can't come up with his name right now.
No, you're good.
So you guys have been I've seen like Bronson actually rode the dirt track / supermoto style dirt track event that maybe
they did at Sturgis, or
yeah, they did at Sturgis. Was that Alistair? Was that McAllister?
No.
Or was it AMA? I don't know.
Yeah, it was AMA. Yeah, no, like they had done it, or it was on the schedule, but then the city voted like against it or something. But it was also because it was like quite a big. It was like going to be a 3-year deal, and it was going to be a lot of taxpayer money going to it. And so then the city voted against it, and then American Flat Track, from what I heard, was like, we need to have this race, and they put up the money to make it happen this year, and they did it right at the end of the rally. So there's still a bunch of bikes in town, and it was kind of on those same streets that you raced with us in the AMA Supermoto Streets of Sturgis stuff. But like,
I saw that picture you sent me. I remember that. I was trying to catch you, and you were just too fast that day.
I don't know, dude. I from my perspective, I remember I had a bit of a rough day. I endoed like in practice. We had those whoops in that double, and I like just got a buck like third lap of practice and endoed my brains out onto the asphalt. And then I got up and I looked at the times, and I was like, actually, like my second lap was good. And I was like, I gotta figure my stuff out. And then I went out and we had that battle, and like Gage had a problem, so we didn't have McAllister bugging us. And you were just like putting a wheel on pretty much every time we come out of the dirt section, like drive up that toward Main Street, and I'd turn the main street, and I feel you right there. And I felt like I was just getting tighter and tighter and tighter and making more mistakes. I'm like, oh my God. And then we like 2 laps to go. Matt shows me 2 laps, and I'm like, okay, I can do 2 laps. And then like on the final lap when we went around the lap, I was like, okay, I got it from here. Like I have a picture of you like just like with your head down, like as we cross the finish line, I'm up in a wheelie. And then like you wanted to win. But then right after the race, you were super cool. You congratulated me and stuff. Like that was, I mean, just to have you racing with us in those days was just so sick.
Yeah. Well, thanks. I enjoyed it too, man. I liked just doing, anything that they had out there. And it was always super slick in certain places, and then it got better. But we had it there in the city, which was the best place. But they had it across
in that park.
Yeah, in the park. That park was there was a lot more maybe dirt over there, but that was cool too. But
dude, I remember you had Dustin, and I mean you were like Gage was still riding for we call him Pops, Russell Case. You guys were both riding the intense bikes and stuff, but like I remember Dustin sweating you that day at the park. He was just like, Mickey's on it today.
Yeah. I liked riding with those guys, and every now and then I'd have a battle with Dustin, and I could manage him from the front. He was faster, but I could manage him from the front, and and he would just get so pissed, and his brother would get so mad at me, and like, come on, man.
I think I remember like OCGP one year, like his brother just raging at you.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, both of those kids were so fast at times, and Gage.
Oh yeah.
Gage was able to beat me a couple times, and it was like, man, I was gonna win, and then there'd be like a lapper, and I would pick the wrong way, and then bang into the lapper, or the one of them I was gonna beat him, and you know who always did that was or would stop us and then restart it. I was gonna win, and it, like 2 times. Robbie Gordon. It was Robbie Gordon.
Yeah, no, yeah. When Matt had us go with those, and like we did that one in Vegas that we were all like bending wheels on and stuff, and we did like a mid-race reset.
Yeah. And then I got a flat. Mine was a flat by the end.
Oh yeah, because you still made the podium with the flat that day because it was like Gage, I think Shane Narbonne and you. I can't remember if you still beat Shane, but you might have still beat Shane even with that flat.
I got second, but I couldn't beat Gage. Gage got by me.
Yeah,
I came out on top of a couple of those that he did. Robbie Gordon did one in Orange County one night, and we jumped onto the little speedway and then came out, and guys were, flatting, but I never flatted. And Fillmore, and there was some other fast kid, and again I was like, I had it, and then they like pulled it in, and we did a restart.
I remember seeing that race. I wasn't at that one, but because you guys jumped over the part of the track, like people were racing underneath and you were jumping over, right? Yeah.
That was
I remember
some of those events that we would do for X Games would have like a ridiculous jump, and it'd be like,
dude, especially when they started adding the Supercross track back in.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, what, Stewart was going to ride one, and he was super fast.
09, he was going to do it when they mellowed the track out.
Yeah.
Yeah, he hit the wall Xing, I think.
Yeah. And McGrath was able to jump one year up over the top of the wood, and there was guys underneath the ramp building little patch kits as
No
the
way.
race was going because there was holes in there. And
I think I watched that video the other night. It was like 05 X Games, and like Henry and Jeremy are like the only two like pretty much jumping over. Like you pretty much had to like they had a dirt transition, but they had to soak it and then preload off the wood and like go over the whole thing. And like Eddie Seal like kept endoing it.
yeah, Eddie took me out. I was yelling at him, and then I ended up.
Yeah, I saw.
him.
Yeah, you came from last in that moto and stuff up to like 15th or something. But
Yeah, I remember that. And McGrath was the only one that could hit the dirt at the bottom and get up onto the very top. I think the other one was onto the dirt, then you could skip off and then land on the
like
side.
pop it.
Jeremy was hit it and get onto the top, and I was like, man, I would have wadded up if I tried and just bottomed out and then just rode the front up there. But
that I don't think I'd have the balls to like risk because like it was just such a close like you're gonna clip it, and then if you clipped it, oh, that could be so bad.
Yeah.
What was?
Well, hey, I have to go use the bathroom for a second. If you guys want to chat for a second, I'll be really quick.
Oh, sounds good.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Dude, it's so gnarly hearing like the difference between like what it used to be and like what it is now. It's so crazy.
Yeah.
Like hearing you guys talk about the jumps that you're like, oh, I don't even think I would hit that and stuff like that, or have it be so technical to that point. But then like these days, it's like you can almost barely call them jumps. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's all super mellow and super safe in a sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, it is, and I get why they do it and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I wonder when he gets back, we'll have to ask him what his favorite type of supermoto track was.
Mm-hmm.
So you boys ready for Nass?
I haven't touched a bike since Colorado.
I got to do bike prep, SD prep, charge cameras, organize things, pack gear, look for my tire warmers in a garage full of boxes.
I gotta still find my padded shorts from Colorado.
I'll take a look at our form tomorrow. Dude, there's a chance I'll be on the 24 Yamaha for Nass, though.
Oh, really? You and Chugel are just going to share it?
Yeah, I think we're just going to double up.
Okay.
Because, like, he's using all of the 250 stuff on his, because I built his out for Colorado, and he wants to go race Nass, so I was just like, well, we'll either have to use mine
Are you going to swap your clamps over to it?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Because I don't think he'll really notice the difference at all. So
yeah, no, but you will.
Yeah. So we'll see. I think that's probably a safer bet than using my 250 weight because that thing is clapped these days.
Yeah. So Mickey, we're getting ready next weekend. We're going to Oklahoma to go race. They got this new North American Supermoto Shootout, Nass for short, that we're doing where with the state of Supermoto as it is, and like the AMA Pro Series, kind of like Alex is doing one event in November in Tucson, but there's not really a Pro Series anymore and stuff. So like SMEC, the East Coast guys, they still have a good series. It's strong, but that guy that promotes that, he's now made this Nass series where you use like kind of clubs, the smaller regional clubs around the nation. So like Colorado Supermoto has a good club. The guys in Washington have a good club. The Wisconsin, Utah. I don't think Utah was a qualifier, but they should be. But there's like 6 qualifiers around the country, and then you go to one of these. So it's like you kind of go and support your local scene, and then you get to go to one big race for the year and stuff. And this year it's in Oklahoma and stuff. But that's kind of a cool thing that I like to. I think it's something that's going to be good for the sport right now for where it's at. And I looked for that to turn into something big.
When is that?
This next weekend. September 21st, 22nd.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah, we did the first one last year, but we ended up getting like the shittiest weather where it was just a downpour, and we lost the dirt section because it was that Oklahoma clay, and it just became like unrideable. We tried to just like bend into it off the pavement and then hook back on, and just dudes were just dying.
I was one of them, dude. I came around that corner and it was like raining so much that right at the entry, did we go over like one of the rumble strips, or I don't remember how we hopped in on it.
Yeah, and then like we kind of dug it out, so then you
Yeah,
come
there
on,
was
you
a
like lance
little
the asphalt
hole.
with your tire at an angle, and it was bad.
Yeah. And by the time the lights class came up, I think it was even I don't remember if it was a practice or a race, but I came around, hopped into it, and in that hole, it had already filled up with water. So like I hydroplaned as the second I touched it, and it was such a short section that I got sideways in the dirt. But then as soon as it hopped back onto the asphalt, I was still sideways. And so I just got high sided to the moon, like landed back on my bike with the handlebar like in my chest, and me and the bike were still sliding. So if you look at the video, I'm like sliding on top of my bike, just like holding onto it for like a good like 20, 30 feet. It was so crazy.
Yeah,
But
wild.
I was actually pretty bummed that weekend because for practice, like they did a lot of prep work on the dirt section,
Yeah, it
and
was a good dirt section.
so when we went out for practice, it was awesome. Like that was like the most comfortable I've ever felt. Like for a dirt section, I felt like I had good speed, so I was really excited for that weekend because I feel like that's where Charlie usually has like a big upper hand on me, is in the dirt section.
Right.
So I was really looking forward to finally having like some good speed in dirt, but got rained out, and then that was the whole mess with my tires, where I was using old tires that looked like, when you first looked at them, they looked real good, but then you kind of sat there and looked at them a little bit longer, and they were.
Yeah, Mickey, have you ever used old rain tires in a rain race? It's not good when you're on old rubber.
Well, no racing, but I mean, I remember riding them until there was even the regular ones. We would, put 120 laps on something that with the cords were showing, and it was still okay. I mean, you still could ride, but in the beginning of the sport, we, you know, we didn't. We did more laps than we should have with those tires. We should have changed them, but and everybody did. I mean, I remember going out to Apex, that place in more Paris, I guess.
Yeah.
And Dave Demond's place, and I would put tons of laps. And then the one that was out in the desert, and then is another track out there. We had tracks that we would go to and just do tons and tons of laps. Sometimes we would have a group of us to where we would, hey, let's go backward, like go reverse, and or add a little section of being on the dirt, and it was pretty exciting for a while, and then if you got on a race track where they, like we did Rio, and where was the other one at, on the like parking lot style. Well,
like State Line.
Yeah, State Line was like that too. They would change that a little bit every year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the coolest Supermoto style track that you rode, you think?
Well, there was actually one in Reno that was like it was an actual
some cool ones.
Yeah, and it was nice, and it had like almost like a mimic of the corkscrew of
Laguna
on that track. We did North Point one time and raced, and it was in the parking lot of the casino. That was a pretty good one. Good dirt. They had a ramp.
Wait, which one? I'm trying to think. Oh, I think I know which one you want.
North Point.
I remember South Point, but
South Point. Maybe, and I may be mixing
I don't
up.
remember a ramp there, but we had that like track inside the arena and stuff. Like you, but I just remember there's a whoop section as we entered the stadium.
That one, the one point was the one in Vegas. The other one was in Reno, and it was at another casino that was, I can't remember the name of it, but I rode Hoffman. Hoffman crashed. He got in front one and was like one lap, and he tucked the front in the dirt. I went both days, and there was like a Winstanley from England. He was right behind me every lap, and he never passed me. But there were some cool people too that were in Supermoto that you saw in the very beginning. You know, we had one race that was in Laguna Seca, and it was maybe positioned around World Superbike.
Was that the first AMA one, or was this? Because I remember the very first AMA race was at Laguna Round, and there was like a bunch of Scott Russell did it, and a bunch of road racers and motocrossers, and
Scott Russell, Danny Laporte,
even Swansea might have done it too.
Swans,
but he was on that DRZ 400 back then, so that's not very fair.
Yeah. Schwantz was good. I rode with Schwantz. I rode with Biaggi a couple times at the one out in Yucca Valley and at Apex. And I got along with pretty much. I basically get along with everybody, but
yeah,
it was always nice. But he was always watching the clock, and I always made you know that, hey, I got a second.
Road racer.
Yeah. And I'm like, hey man, I'm like this far behind you. And you'd be like, I'd be like, yeah, he's right about that. Yeah.
You're like, hey, let's go in the dirt and let's see how it goes then.
So, I have gone out to like before X Games, we would go out to Elsinore, the motocross track, and go on the track with the Supermoto bikes. And there was a couple big jumps, and we would do them. We would do them with our slicks. I can't understand why now, but but you all that you would just be a slow lap time. You couldn't.
Yeah. You try to drag your front brake into a rut, and it's just like
yeah. Oh, you could slide in, but you couldn't go in fast and hit the brakes.
I've done it a couple times here locally at my like prep motocross track, and people are always like, "What the?"
Yeah. Every now and then we would. I mean, even back in when I was doing motocross, I would get on the pit, and we only had what we had learned from watching Superbikers. I rode for Yamaha for a couple of years when Lawson was still a part of American Yamaha, and Rainey and Roberts. We would
this is late 8, or this is like 88, 89.
88, 89, 88, 87, 80, 88. And I had to do dealer shows with Yamaha, and we'd all be in. One of them was in Las Vegas, and we would all have to do all kinds of different things for Yamaha and be the press stuff, but they would have like demo rides and stuff, so we'd all go out on the bikes, and it was a lot of fun. I've actually been on a ride with Eddie Lawson on a big like 1000cc with bags and those big bikes, and his wife was on the back, and I couldn't stay with him. I was on a 600, and he's going over 100 miles an hour with her on there, and I'm like, I was scared. I was like, I'm like, well, he's okay with it, but I'm not,
Yeah.
ripping, and yeah.
My wife wouldn't be about that. She wouldn't be about that. She'd be like, give me the mic.
And that's what I was thinking too. But his wife was on. They were all cool about it. That was normal. Yeah, I have had really good times with other riders that were maybe more seasoned and more established. And I rode it. I mean, my first year at Honda, I was on a team with my teammates were Johnny O'Mara, David Bailey, Rick Johnson.
Yeah, that's so gnarly.
And you're just trying to stay above water, like keep treading water, stay in there. And I had great season and learned a lot, and then started to understand that I was like those guys, but I didn't know I was just like I'm just another human being like them. I didn't view them as human beings, especially like David Bailey, we would go and I would watch them and saw how they prepared themselves and their bikes and what they expected out of their relationships with their mechanics, with the team, how they tested, and then when I got to see them, because we were pretty secretive, they didn't show you, they didn't go, okay, well, we're going to go for a 5-mile run. I mean, eventually, yes, you became that. But in the beginning, the guys that didn't know who you weren't going to like show you how they ate and how they trained, and all that. But you learned and had relationships with people that you trusted them, and you didn't really like, because me and David, I was in the 125 class, so I wasn't really competing.
Direct competitor,
yeah. So, and we became, because Johnny and David were that. Those two guys together were like one person, and they were everything they did together. So, and then Rick Johnson was outside just like me. So, it took a while.
I mean, you look at Osho now, and he's training the Lawrences, so it's like,
yeah,
he was like on the top tier back then, and it's like he's never really stepped off it.
No, he was very fit. He had more of a interest than a hobby for triathlon and run and some of those other things that, like, he would come and stay at my house out in I lived in Palm Springs for a while when I rode for Yamaha. He would come out and ride for a couple of days, and he'd make me run with him, and I was smoked after he left. But we
hammered out.
Yeah, I mean, we would go ride motorcycles all day, and then he'd run afterwards, and we'd go eat a ton, and then a few of the other guys that I got to know, sort of the same. Bailey and Johnny were like that, and then we went to the end of '86, and Johnny went on to another team for '87, and David and we raced a couple times in Europe. I had my first Supercross win in Paris, and was now I was like, I was there in Supercross as well for Honda, and I started to win and beat those guys too. And we came home, and then early in '87 was when David was hurt, so we didn't benefit by us working together, and I think that would have been the start of that. But at Yamaha, I went to Yamaha after that, and it was kind of tough. But I had teammates with Doug Dubach, and he and I were good friends, still are. Jeff Stanton,
he seems like a fun dude.
Yeah, and he would be great in anything he did on a motorcycle. So it's amazing. Never had him out in Supermoto, but
right.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think history tells us that like 1988 Yamaha wasn't that good either, and you still were like you were able to podium on that bike.
Yeah, you know that little story that I did with Motocross Action, I talked about that, and it's only like a brief statement that, hey, we went to Upside Down Forks that year, 88, and they weren't very good, but they were still better than the other ones. But the chassis I didn't like, and we couldn't redo it because it was already built, and that was the rules. But I wanted them to change it all. But coming off of Honda to Yamaha was it was a demo. It wasn't as, the motor was good. It was close, but the bike wasn't. And
was the team dynamic as like gnarly as Honda was back then too? Was Yamaha more? Was it like, I don't know what the right word for it would be, but like it just seemed like that was, when we look back, like that was peak Honda in a sense. Not that they're not peak now, but like in that time, Honda was the team. Like I'm sure when you got off Huskies and you got on that Honda, it was probably pretty mind blowing. And stuff. Was Yamaha of a equal caliber back then, or?
The equipment wasn't, but the mechanics, the focus to work hard. And
yeah, you had Ron Heben, didn't you?
Yes.
I think I remember listening to a podcast with him, and it was pretty sick to hear his insights.
Yeah, he was great. I had great mechanics, and I didn't get to really pick them. They were just,
whoever they had, or whoever they had signed.
And I got the guys that I would have wanted to pick, anyway. So, and that, you know what, the team itself, they were similar. There were people that went back and forth from teams as mechanics, so they kind of knew how everybody worked, and equipment wise, there was just, the Honda just had really great years there, and those were then. But Yamaha was a different time, and unfortunately for me, I expected, I maybe was unrealistic about wanting more from them than I was willing to give myself, I guess. So and I fought with Keith McCarty was the team manager, and at one point I talk about it in that story. I had one incident where I broke my hand because I was trying to show those guys that even a clapped out production Honda was faster than our race bike, and I crashed doing lap times on it and broke my hand, and my hand
shit,
didn't.
on the Honda.
I had a recent surgery to repair the damage from way back when. But yeah, and it's like an immature punk kid type of thing I did. Anyway,
but that was also like that time in your life, like you're like on this fucking like you're just skyrocketing in your like beliefs in yourself and who you think you can be and where you think you should be and stuff. And it's like it's a hard balance as a racer because it's like your ego can be your worst enemy, but then it's also like what helps you push to that level.
It's a in hindsight, it is somewhat like that same thing. You're the person who you really are gets clouded by your ego. And back then, when you're like at the like at Yamaha in the beginning, I had a good chance to beat I could have. The first race at Anaheim, I crashed and I still was second. I won that race, and then for the next few, I was struggling, and I wasn't able to step away from that that place in my ego to where I could have relaxed and been a little patient and made it work, because we were right there and I didn't do that. And in that story it comes out that I'm just like I hated the manager, and I hated the bike. But in a sense that's true, but it was that because sometimes you need, like you're married, you're with somebody that when you have that moment of sickness, that your ego starts to chip away at you, she can grab you and bring you back to the person who you are. And as such in life, it doesn't help to be aware of that I did that any more than just like, well, that the truth is that I made those mistakes, and it didn't work out, because who knows?
Yeah.
If I could have just calmed down and just said, yeah, well, I'll just, to wait 3 weeks to get a win would be way better than to never have one, because I never got in America, I never got a Supercross win other than heat races. And it there was times where like you can't go back and change the results. They just are what they are, whether you were fastest guy or not. But if I had a little more patience, it might have been different, and it it's it could have been, not as good, but it is what it is. But just to be aware of that, you're responsible for what you do. It's always going to be that, like when we, I've heard this in movies or whatever, but in the end, when you go in front of God, you can't say that, well, it's because that Yamaha had such a badly engineered frame. I could, you can't.
Yeah.
So after I left, David Bradshaw, he had great success. There was guys that made him work good. Years later, McGrath had success on him. I think McGrath had a success if he was on a,
he had success on the RM back then too.
yeah, whatever. But it is.
So speaking of that, like with McGrath and you've seen like riding with Bailey, I mean, I feel like in my world, I throw you in that category too, because I feel like you're always been one of those. I don't know if natural talent's the way for it, but your style is timeless. Like I can see pictures, like find pictures of you from the '80s and be like, that's a modern style and stuff. Like the way you rode a bike, it was like different from everyone else, but it's transcended time. And so my question is like, has the top level always kind of looked the same throughout the generations? Like the McGraths, the Baileys, and then like say Supermoto, the Herfosses, Fillmores, the guys that reach the peak. Is it similar? With racing, is it always kind of the cream that finds that top and it's always a very similar mentality in your experience, or no?
Well, I think similar is a pretty broad word for it. Because if you watch those battles between like Stewart and Carmichael, they're not the same, but they were, but I think in my like what I'm watching of let's say today I'm watching
Jed
and his brother, and they're so similar, and I really appreciate everything that Jet does, but I like what Hunter does as well, although I think the power that can be generated by the style that Jet uses is more easy.
Yeah.
For him to do anything. If he loses traction, he has an answer to it because of his setup of his body and his weight, his what is the word? The word is his presence.
Like balance.
There is sort of by 360 degrees, he's present from any direction. He covers more because his body is prepared to be more like if you're leaning,
it can go anywhere instead of being locked in.
Right, he would push you over, but it always appears that Jet is sort of centered over center, and not like on the back or up over the front, or pushing on hard on this or that. He's always like, probably if you put a scale on what weight is on his left foot to his right foot, it's probably about 50% on, like they're probably identical, and
right.
and has the same. I liked that about David as well. David Bailey. I could watch David and I could take photos out of the magazines, and I used to do this when I was younger, was take the pictures out of the magazines and then put them on a page, and then write notes about and then point to what parts that I wanted to explain.
Emulate, yeah.
Yeah, and then train myself to know what I was seeing and why it was better. Why is he always like, it just looks like if you took a picture of him in an intense moment, it would look like that, the gum pictures of the football players, like where they're acting like they're going to tackle, and but I at the same in the same in my mind, I think that there's other ways that you could because you're not tall and lean and like the perfect height and weight. Let's say that you're built like Ricky Carmichael. You're only 6 or like 5'4" or whatever.
Yeah, right.
And he's made it work.
Mm-hmm.
That there's times where he was so powerful and strong. How are you going to beat that? So, yeah. And if you watch and look at the photos there, stills, they just look perfect. Like he's charging,
Mm-hmm.
Or Bob Hanna,
mm-hmm.
Hanging off the side, and he was doing it, but he was making it work. And so I think that there is ideal, and that might be like Jet and
yeah,
and his brother, but there'll be someone else that's going to come along eventually will be better than him.
Yeah,
it's just,
and I think it's like they've built on the generations that came before them, and so it's like gonna constantly evolve. I kind of like when I ride and I practice on the weekends, I always like focus on technique a little bit and stuff. I feel like when I practice is when I really focus on technique. And as soon as I go into a race and the gate drops, I kind of I'm there. I go with it. And then sometimes I'll see pictures of myself at a race. I'm like, oh, that doesn't look good, but I'm just focused on going forward. Like some of the stuff you said, it makes me think of a early church father quote, the glory of God is a human being fully alive. And to me, that's like what I feel on a motorcycle when I'm like truly present in this world. I'm not worried about like I'm saying, sometimes I do worry about how I'm riding the bike, how I'm doing this, what I'm doing, and that kind of stuff. But then there's other times where the motorcycle is really the best way in my world to escape and like to be truly in the moment and stuff.
Yeah.
And I feel like the top guys, like they find that, I don't know if you want to call it the flow state, whatever it is, they find it. Like I've had rare glimpses at it. Like I'm of a tier of caliber that's like I've gotten good enough to be good, but I have very rare days where I can be of a competitive high level and stuff. I feel like the top guys, they find those flow states. They find that those where they can be like you're saying with Bailey, he had that balance where he didn't bind the chassis to like where he had no room to go if something went wrong. It's like something starts to go wrong and he can go any direction, just like Jet did or whatever. And it's just fascinating how all these different styles can work and stuff, but it all kind of comes down to like, I don't know, mentalities in a sense.
Yeah, I saw you ride at your best, and it is I love that statement you said. And if we really look at it as if we really read the words clearly, that God created us in His likeness. I mean, can you imagine what His likeness must be? What would it look like on a bike? It would. Well, I don't even think about that, but
Exactly.
I love that I see like kind of really cool things out of a lot of people. You know who else? Like the one kid, Cooper. What's his
Cooper
name?
Webb?
No, not
Justin Cooper.
Yeah, Justin. That guy. I mean, it wouldn't. Because I've seen him ride in many different races, and he's always as fast as everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Like if he had a crash and a concussion in practice, and he raced that day and he won both motos by 30 seconds, I wouldn't be surprised because he possesses all those things. Also Hunter does. Hunter, and he won today.
Yep.
And so there's many of those guys out there that are capable of possessing perfection or a symbiotic relationship with their motorcycles where their movements on and like if you thought about looking at a jump into a berm and then an exit jump, how it could be really great. All those guys are capable of doing that without thinking about it, but by just doing it. But the human aspect that we carry into that is that we're critiquing and we're judging and we're assuming and we're practicing and without just reacting. And
yeah,
right, you're separating yourself from body. You're almost visualizing yourself from a third person in that aspect, and it's creating input, and you're doing all too much at a lot of times.
Yeah, the human, that thing with the ego, maybe. But I know that when you do ride a motorcycle well, and you're completely present and your thoughts and reactions and your muscle fibers and all that are all together, it's a pretty good place to be in the helmet, on the bike.
yeah.
For that, I've been able to have that on Supermoto on many occasions because you're able to feel it and understand the bike, the grip and the bike sliding and accelerating and braking and all those different things and all the G forces that you're feeling, and you're applying what you have.
That's exactly it. Like Supermoto brings that out almost better than any other form of motorcycle.
Goes farther than theory.
Yeah.
It's like the feeling of like sliding into a corner, and then like if you're on one of those tractions or you got where you are able to utilize the power to slide out, or just that feel and being able to be like in connection where it's just like this charge that you just and you're just with, and the feeling and the movement is just, it's so great.
Yeah, and with Supermoto, I mean, we used to do this a long time ago. I would like even in the parking lot of the track, we would have there'd be like a trash cans, and you'd skid in on a motocross bike, and then feed the clutch and the throttle at the same time. So as soon as the bike kind of would skid to a stop, you would open the throttle and continue the slide, and then follow the slide and then exit with the slide. You could do that on Supermoto. So you could do that, come in hard on the brakes, the bike's still sliding, the rear wheel is still moving, and you start to feed the clutch throttle,
Yeah, you go from a decel slide to an acceleration slide.
Yeah, it's not a sliding braking slide. It's an acceleration to continue it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to practice that at certain places, and then every lap I'd come down and I could look at the skid mark that was left and know, okay, that one was good. And, and I loved that part of Supermoto and grip. And when you started to increase the grip on the front wheel, you got the back was a lot more manageable to do that. Especially on that big bike. The big bike, you could do that at speed, like at high speed.
Yeah, I bet the unlimited bikes were probably kind of retarded for that.
I could slide that thing. Like, you would have to commit to it. Because if you snapped it out there and you weren't ready for it and it gripped, it would hit you too. So
yeah, like it's at those Sturgis races like that me and you did. It's like some of those ones when we come up against those like 55-gallon water drums that are full of water, you're like, this is dangerous, but you're coming at it so fast that you're in a slide, decel slide, and you have to pick up the throttle early enough to continue the slide so that you can get the rear wheel stepped around you enough to where you can exit and not hit the barrels and stuff. And when you did it right, it was just the coolest feeling. And then as soon as it you stand up and it starts grabbing enough traction, it just slaps into a wheelie. And that just feels cool.
Yeah. Well, that's a good thought. I'm gonna cut this off here. I gotta get onto some stuff.
Thanks a lot for coming on, Mickey. Man, there's so much we could talk to you about, but we really appreciate your time.
Yeah, I probably rambled for a while, and the other two guys, I wish I had let you guys talk some more and find out more.
Fine.
But
no, I enjoyed listening.
Yeah, it was great.
Maybe if you get out here, I'm close to anything that McAllister does out here is a 40-minute drive for me.
Okay.
And I
so you're more up in like the Rosamond or is it Roseville? What, Sacramento area? Is that where you're at?
And okay. I'm like 40 minutes away from Infineon.
Okay. Yeah.
Where they do have some track days out there. And every now and then McAllister has races out this way or towards Sacramento's close.
Yeah.
There's a couple tracks that he goes to. So yeah.
I did a cool race of his out in like Placer County Fair this June that he did and stuff, and it was pretty fun. So next time I'm out there, I will definitely hit you up.
All right.
Thanks, Mickey.
All right, guys. Yeah, no problem.
Thanks for coming on.
Pleasure meeting you, man.